this week we're talking about a topic near and dear to my heart, and that is the difference between marketing and growth. Why a lot of marketing doesn't end up leading to actual growth over time. Maybe you get more leads, but then a seasonal fluctuation or market shift can occur, and all that just falls away. So, what really is the difference between marketing and growth? What can you do to affect growth? So quick poll of the two people that we have. So have you ever had questions in your work about like what channels to use or start testing, expand into in your marketing? So it's a yes. And any questions about like what messaging to use, like when to use that messaging, how much budget to put into different initiatives. So those are the kind of questions that I'm hoping to tackle today. So um, little known fact, I wrote a book. It's being edited now. I'm really excited about it, but it is it's basically on this topic. It's a growth framework to help people understand how, when, where to market. Thank you. Um, and I think it brings simplicity to a really complex and potentially confusing part of marketing, which is strategy. So when it comes to marketing, you've got your forest people and your trees people. And so strategy is basically trying to navigate through a forest, where you have some people that are looking at the trees that are all around them, and then some people that are up, looking at the forest and saying, okay, we need to go from here to here, and this is where we'll camp tonight, whatever, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So the problem is that it's not always like somebody up here guiding and then people down here. Nowadays, especially with so much dynamic fluctuation of marketing teams, a lot of junior teams, with leaders just trying to navigate as best they can, the leaders keep getting pulled down into the trees or into the weeds, as we say all the time, to help train and upskill and direct and correct the junior marketers. So hey, here's what we need to do. Oh, you missed this red flag, and now it's been 6 months of declining performance and we haven't done anything to correct it, and now it's going to take potentially 6 months or more to get back on path. And it's then you go back up and you're like, okay, where were we? And it's hard to kind of juggle between those two mindsets. So I wanted to put together something that can kind of help make that path easier to chart and easier to reference so that you know where you are at any time. It's a bit of an abstract thing, but that's the way that I like to look at it. So this really is kind of designed based on universal principles, can be applied whether you are a $100,000 business or $100 billion business. It shouldn't matter. It is a framework. So first, I want to tackle that difference between marketing and growth. So if your marketing is not generating growth, maybe you'll have some up days and down days, but it's just kind of flat. It's generally going to be one of two problems. Either you're not planning for long-term growth. You're receiving a little too much pressure from up top to generate more leads now, and all the things that you have to do to generate more leads now tend to be short-term tactics because that's what gets leads now. But if you're too focused on that and you don't have the time to generate long-term growth, then you're going to be kind of stuck in that like vicious cycle. And then the other problem is that you might be misaligned in your focus on short-term growth and short-term tactics. Sometimes it's both. And again, with this framework, the goal is to help kind of refocus alignment and make sure that you're talking to the right people at the right times with the right channels and the right messaging, to educate them when they need to be educated, to sell them when they need to be sold, and to make them aware when they need to be made aware. So it follows the know, like, trust principle. Basically, that, all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to people they know, like, and trust. So if you want to get more leads, then you're going to have to either make sure more people know about you, more people like you, and just prefer your brand versus someone else's, and then trust you, are willing to part with their hard-earned money, or can convince their leadership or buying committee or whatever that you are the best fit for their company. So since we have such a small group today, would you both put in the chat, if you're open to it, kind of what industry you're in, what your role is, and that'll kind of help. Or if you want, you can unmute and say it. So it's just a couple of us. So. Thanks.
Yeah, happy to share.
Thanks. Yeah.
Hey,
so
David, did you want to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. I'm Megan. I lead the digital team for a nonprofit, Share Our Strength. We run the No Kid Hungry campaign.
Nice.
So it's a really interesting construct of Share Our Strength, No Kid Hungry, and then there's another campaign, but it's all like 3 different brands. And we're going through a rebranding right now with Share Our Strength. So the growth model and trying to set exec level expectations is going to be important.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. David?
Yeah, so I lead digital marketing at a company called Aware. We sell air quality monitors, both B2C and B2B. So I've been at the company now for about 2 months, so pretty early on. But on the B2C side, we are selling mainly through our website, as well as Amazon, and then actively trying to get our product into some larger stores like Home Depot, Lowe's, Target. On the B2B side, that side is very new. So that's where most of my focus is. And we're generally targeting facilities teams at the following industries. So corporate headquarters of companies, to install our B2B air quality monitor product, commercial real estate where they're implementing our product for their retail stores as like a value add, and then higher education and K-12 at the school district level. So COVID has made people much more conscious and, no pun intended, aware of the air quality that they're breathing indoors. And they are also, I mean, the B2C product is really big for a few types of people. So anybody who has asthma or any sort of respiratory illness, we're tracking fine dust and chemicals in the air and toxins in the air. Also, West Coast, it's huge because wildfires, so we're tracking CO2. Yeah, and
Wow.
full transparency, we're actually considering using web mechanics for our website redesign.
Cool. Do it. They're amazing.
Do you work at web mechanics?
So yes and no. I mean, yes. So I'm the head of coaching. Technically, because my division is separate from the agency, I don't have a lot of insight into what they do and how they do it. But I know that they're like change lives and are amazing. So I mean.
Well, yeah, I was at EverFi for 4 years, and we used web mechanics there for 4 years. So.
Nice. Yeah. They've got some cool case studies there. So sweet. Well, yeah, definitely. I'll if you want, I can put you in touch with Dave. He's a cool guy. We've got a call after this, so I can just drop your name. Oh,
Dave. Who's Dave?
I'm sorry, Dave Garson. He's the kind of the head.
Dave and I have talked like 6 times the past month. So
cool. Okay, sweet. So yeah, you I'll leave it in your court. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that context. This, by the way, I tend to get like rambling, can be totally conversational. So, if you've got questions, like feel free and unmute and just like talk, or you can even like raise your hand if that's comfortable, do whatever, drop a question in the chat. It's chill. And this is all about you guys today. despite me being the one talking all the time. So I do have a like a graph that I'm going to share. So I'm going to share my screen, and it won't take long. I'm going to pull this up and then I'm going to drop it back down so that I can see you guys. But if actually, I think with Zoom, yeah, I can still see you. Okay, cool. So this is that framework I was talking about. This is called the market journey path. And basically my thought process when designing this was, you've got a market that is experiencing problems. The customer journey is a big thing in CX. I was a CCXP for a while. I let my certification lapse because I never used it and I just don't care. But the important thing is that the customer journey is not linear. And everybody knows that. Yay, Shara is joining us. Okay, if I can get this thing out of the way now. Oh my goodness. Okay, cool. Sorry, I have to let everybody in, so I may have to pause if that happens. Hey, Shara. Super chill group
Hello?
today.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was having an internet issue, so
No,
sorry.
you're fine. Everybody does it.
Yeah.
So I'm quick context, bring you up to speed since it's a small chill group. We're going to make this super discussional. And I'm walking through a growth strategy framework to help you kind of identify when, where, what, how of your marketing strategy with what channels, what messaging, when, how much budget, and just a new way to look and hopefully simplify all the complexity of marketing strategy. So that you can make more money and grow long term while getting the benefit of more short term leads. Or more leads in the short term. So this is the framework I designed. Basically, thought process was, customer journey is not linear. It's very, very different, pretty well different for everybody. So I had to think of how to design something that would be more universal, like really universal things that you can use more broad scale. And I thought, okay, well, as far as problem awareness and readiness to buy, that's a pretty universal thing. People are contented. They don't know that they have a problem, or they don't have a problem at all. Like they don't have it, or they don't know about it, so they're content. And then something occurs to make them aware of their suffering, that they have a problem, they have a need. So now they're actively suffering, right? So you basically have this progression, and they have one of two options now. Like they can either decide, okay, I'm going to solve this problem and go to the buying market, or I'm not really ready, I want to do more research, or the pain isn't bad enough, I'm going to wait. And so, then you have this divergence, and you have some people that are like, okay, yeah, let's buy, let's do this quick sales cycle. And then you have others that, could take forever. And then, 12 to 18 months later for, a relatively low value purchase, they're like, okay, well, now I have all the facts. So let's move forward. And everybody's different. So generally you're going to have different market segments at every stage of this journey at any time. And studies show that generally about 3% of people that see your content, that interact with your business, are going to be ready to buy at any given point. So if everybody's fighting over that same kind of 3%, which is the buying market, then your only hope for long-term growth is to not only fight in and dominate the buying market, but then expand to the other markets as well, and follow, again, that know, like, trust principle, build relationships before they're ready to buy, via proximity and education, and providing value before they're ready to pass over their money, so they view you as a credible expert and have that reciprocity and goodwill built up. So these are kind of standard marketing principles. A lot of what I talk about is based on principles. It's fundamental marketing 101 kind of stuff. But I think that as we grow, as we develop in our business, marketing savvy mindsets, we get more and more lost in the trees, or even just thinking about how to navigate through the forest when there are so many options and so much information, which like some of it sounds like misinformation, but there's a lot of ways to grow a business. Just some ways are faster and more effective. I like to bring people back to looking at the fundamentals and simplifying so that then they can kind of build layers of simple concepts that then add up to really complex systems. So how to look at this chart? Really just like on the surface, it doesn't help a whole lot. But if you imagine the procession, the progression through this, people are content, an event occurs, they're actively aware of their suffering. Say they decide to buy, they can either buy from you or from your competitor. And then, generally you would want to maintain that relationship. So they move into a nurture cycle. And there are different things you can do at each stage to move things forward more quickly or more smoothly, to build strength in the relationship that you're building and increase the odds of them buying from you rather than buying from the competitor. And then also increase the odds in the nurture phase of getting referrals, of upselling, cross-selling. That's really where a lot of the money can be made, and a lot of growth in the short term can be made. It's usually a missed opportunity in a lot of cases. And then, say they go to the waiting market, and then, they can move to the buying market at any point from the waiting market. But there are two options there really are, they eventually need or want your offer, or they never do. And some studies will say that maybe 30% of the market is just never going to buy. Some will say as much as like 40 to 50% are never going to buy. So it definitely varies, but we can agree that a large portion of the market is just not going to buy. So, sales will often look at this and say, okay, well, then it's a numbers game. We need to hit with as much volume as possible, 100 dials a day and, 100 emails a day, and eventually we'll get someone. But that's kind of relying on the hope that you hit the right portion of that 3% that's ready to buy with the right message at the right time. And so, if you send enough volume, you can do that. But it's not necessarily a viable form of testing to send that much volume. Ashara, good point. Yeah, that's why you have to build value. So it's not a viable method to go for the sale 100% of the time on the first interaction with everybody. That's why everybody hates those LinkedIn contacts where it's like connect and then you immediately get a message, hey, buy my stuff. So, it doesn't work. And it may work a couple of times, which is, those rats getting the cheese in the maze thinking that, like, oh, well, now I'll run around the maze all day, every day because I know I can get cheese. So suffice to say, let's take a look at how to practically apply this. So it's very straightforward and very simple, but we can look at this in a lot of different ways. So we can look at this in terms of which channels to look at, order of growth, in terms of like where should I focus based on the size or opportunity for growth in my business, and then how can I what messaging should I use based on how can I recognize what indicators are being shown to tell me where someone is. So first I want to tackle kind of where to start with this. So really for all of you in your businesses, you're going to be well beyond just focusing on the buying phase. You have to do as much as possible to capitalize on those who are ready to buy now. But if you're looking for more growth right now, then the next best place to look is going to be the nurture phase. So those customers or clients that you already have, that can potentially refer you to others, that can potentially move up into, ascend into a higher level of service, or be upsold or cross-sold. And David, for you, a lot of moving into the B2C, there will be a lot more opportunity in the buying phase, since you're going to be kind of like looking at a new market and new ways of approaching that. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about messaging at the buying phase and ways to kind of influence and increase sales there. So, but the nurture phase, generally for those well established who are already, doing a lot in the buying phase, that nurture phase is where you want to do things like, sometimes it's as easy as reaching out to strike up a conversation with someone that you have an existing relationship with, a working relationship, and just start it by, asking like, hey, how are things? And it can be like both a customer experience thing, and then, hey, you find out they're happy. Awesome. Hey, who else do you engage with in your work that you think would benefit from a relationship like we have? It's a super easy stuff, and again, super elementary, but often just not done because we're either in the weeds or we're over the forest, and we don't have time to sit and think like, how can I get more leads with the existing relationships we have? Next would be the buying market. David, I'll go ahead and speak to a couple of things here. So B2C is a little different in that a lot of times there's a shorter sales cycle. There's no buying committee. There is, for the better your ideal customer, the better you can use this tool, because if you're selling like air quality monitors, well, maybe you have very conscientious, like research heavy customers that are going to spend a lot of time and want a lot of facts. Well, then usually you'd be like, well, build out that landing page, or the product detail page with, if it is an e-commerce thing, like build it out so that you have like, as little as possible on there. It's very simple, and they know they can click and buy, and it's very easy. Well, in this case, you might want to have a really robust description section. You may want to have like FAQ section. You may want to have some comparisons, a lot of things, on the actual page. And then, you want to do some digging into what questions are being asked. And as much qualitative data as you can collect about, from like reviews that competitors are listing, or that customers are leaving on competitors' products, or things like that. Just to know what's actually leading these people to buy, what's making them like the product, what's making them dislike products. Just kind of reverse engineer that for your ad copy and for your landing pages. And generally you'll see conversion rates increase and click-through rates increase. And it's all about in the buying market, knowing what problem has led them to want to buy, and then what they need to push them that last little bit to buy from you rather than from a competitor, because they're already ready. They know the problem that they have. They know that the solution is an air quality monitor. They're probably also looking at air purifiers, so you can look into potentially partnering up with companies in that space. Or targeting, if you're doing like Google Ads, you could target like custom intent audiences using like Honeywell and various air purifier websites as a basis for that audience. So just some tips there for the buying market phase.
Cool.
Yeah, and you have any questions about any of that?
All right, now.
Cool. You're a digital marketing guy, so like we speak the same language on a lot of that. So what generally you would want to do if if you've got a little extra time, or if you have extra resources, or somebody on your team isn't completely overbooked with their work, then you want to start looking toward the suffering market. Suffering and waiting market generally can be spoken to about the same. They're both still actively suffering. It's just one has been suffering for longer and doesn't view the pain as quite so acute, whereas the other will have kind of just entered in, and maybe deciding, okay, like, what is this? What are the implications? What do I do? How is this going to affect us? What solutions are out there? So it's going to be a matter of determining what information are they looking for, and how can we make sure that they find it and consume it, and know that we're the ones that gave it to them. So usually this is where people start to run into trouble with focus. So focus becomes an issue when you either don't recognize indicators of someone's state of problem awareness, and you go for the sale with somebody who's just seeking information, or it becomes an issue when you're kind of, you don't have a clear progression to walk your prospects through to lead them to a purchasing decision. So it's kind of like, hey, I have this problem, pitch. And they're like, okay, well, but you don't know all of the things about my problem, and I'm still learning it. So, if you could just kind of help me understand it better and then prove that you understand it, then, maybe we can talk about the solution. So usually nowadays, especially B2B, this is done with content creation, with text articles, blogs, white papers, but also growing more and more. It's done with video. It's done with podcasts. It's done with interviews. It's done with a lot of different. Sometimes people are going in surprising ways onto like Reddit to have these sophisticated conversations. Right? Yeah, Shara knows. It's crazy sometimes. The kind of hidden gems that you can find for better understanding your customer and the journey that they're going through, to inform like, okay, what content should I be creating? What questions are people asking that they need answered before they can make a decision? And then what questions are going to show, like, if I answer this question, is that going to show them that we're the credible expert? And how can we answer it if it's been answered a million times? How can we answer it in a unique way that will show our brand is different, and then better resonate with our ICP versus somebody a little further down market or whatever. This is one of the areas where a lot of experts these days are focusing on content creation and brand building, and honestly, I think it is really the next big push that a lot of B2B marketers are trying to move toward, because the pendulum has swung so far in the past toward direct response marketing and the buying market phase that now it's kind of swinging back, and everyone's like, screw all that stuff, leave it to sales, we'll do just content and brand building. Honestly, I think there needs to be a balance, and there's a time for everything. So the way I look at it is in the buying market and nurture market stages, that's kind of your short-term tactics and focus to kind of enable sales and push people through to demo requests and to purchases and submission forms, anything like that. That's when you want those contacts, and removing friction at these stages is essential to increasing conversion and making it easy for those who are ready to buy. You don't have to walk them through like a 6-call cadence to to have them take that step if they're already ready. And then in the suffering market and waiting market, really, that is where if you can recognize those indications, and that's all going to be based on understanding your customer and the questions that they ask, and where they do their research, behaviors that they might elicit on your website that indicate research rather than intent to buy. That's where you're going to be doing all of the work to hopefully shorten the sales cycle and I mean, more or less automate the cycle of pushing them through to sales, which is not pushing them really, it's guiding them. But let's talk channels a little bit. I'll just briefly touch on the contented market, and then we can talk channels and messaging a little bit. So the contented market phase, suffering and waiting, you're kind of answering questions, educating, and then the contented market should really be your last frontier. This is where you end up like Coke or companies where it's like they're telling 3-year-olds that they should buy their product eventually. Like that's the final frontier of brand building, of like, okay, this is where we're making people who are completely unaware that they have a problem but might be in our target market aware that we exist and that we can solve problems, and that this is how you're really, if I had to like set goals for what you want to accomplish at each of these stages, contented market, you want to build awareness that the problem exists, and then make sure that they associate your name, your brand name, with that problem. At the suffering and the waiting phase, you're educating. You're associating the idea again, the problem, with your brand and your solution. So especially if there are multiple solutions to their problem, this is where you want to make sure that you're associating your brand. Like you can maybe educate them about the different solutions, since they're going to be looking for them anyway. Like let them know, like, yeah, there are lots of solutions out there, here's why this one's the best. And then buying market, really you just want visibility and credibility. Like show up and show them how awesome you are, show them how many people you've helped, show them how you've transformed XYZ company by 500%. Be real, but also show them how cool you are. And then nurture, it's all about supporting and serving. And then as you continue to support and serve, help them solve whatever problems you are able to help them solve, then ask and you shall receive. Like, hey, can I do you know anybody else that could benefit? Could you introduce me to someone that was in a similar situation to the one that we helped you escape? And then you'll know the relationships better than I. So you'll know when the time's right to reach out and, hey, this has been going great. But you've experienced a lot of growth. How about this next level? Like, what do you think? So it's kind of the sorry, go ahead. You have a question?
Can you repeat what the contented, what is associated with that? I just missed it. I know you said suffering and waiting, associate the problem with your organization, and educate. What was the?
Yeah, so contentedness is all about making them, or the contented market, you're making them aware of the problem at all, so that basically they're going to fire that reticular activation, their reticular activators when they experience the problem. Then you're more likely to be associated with solving it. So just kind of, you see TV commercials. If you watch TV or streaming without, a premium service or whatever, then, you see the commercials, they're like, oh, such and such problem, for like a medication or whatever. It's like, well, I don't have that, but if I ever have it, then now I'm going to think like, oh, I saw that commercial. What was that? And then you're searching, and then the name comes up and you recognize it. You're like, I trust them. Well, it's because you're more familiar, because the mere exposure effect, studied back in the day, the 60s and the 90s, there were some more studies. It basically, they said, things with which we're more familiar or more comfortable, we're more likely to trust and prefer. So the more someone sees your brand associated with a certain problem, the more likely you are to come up when they think of that problem, or solving that problem. And then also, the more likely they are to recognize you when searching solutions. And they're just more likely to trust you and choose you because you have been on their radar more. So it's
Yeah, it's like lawyer commercials.
exactly.
People in other countries don't understand why we have that in the United States, but I mean, hey.
Yeah, and that's a great example. I've worked with a lot of lawyers, and the only way really to help a lawyer grow is to blast the tar out of the entire market. So they're on buses, they're on billboards, they're all over the internet. They're sending emails, they're on social media, they're doing TV commercials, like anywhere and everywhere they can be. Because the most familiar one is going to be the most trusted, and it's a break fix solution. So like they don't need you until something breaks, and when they do, you better have the most trust. So if you're in a situation like that, really your sales cycle is going to be like, oh crap, I had an accident, I need to buy now, like I need to get a lawyer. So the sales cycle, they're going to go from contented to suffering real fast, and then from suffering, as soon as they're not in shock, they're buying. And sometimes they're in the car like googling personal injury attorney, like I must sue the mother. So that is something to be aware of. If you're in a situation where there's not a long sales cycle, you've got to put all of your focus on the contented and suffering markets. Really the contented market, because if they don't know that they're suffering until right before they start looking, then you need the most familiarity and trust. So I have talked a lot about a lot of things. Let's cover channels as quickly as possible. So buying market channels, this one's kind of easy. Google search. Like if people are searching for a solution, this is where you want to be. A lot of B2B. The buying market is like they already know who they're reaching out to when they're ready to buy, because of all of the research that they've done, and because of referrals. A lot of people in B2B are asking, like, colleagues and peers, like, hey, who should I reach out to? In those situations, again, you kind of have to put a lot of the work into the suffering market phase, and also contented market, by building awareness in your target market, and by building relationships. So like LinkedIn is a fantastic way to build proximity to your target market, establish credibility, educate, build trust, that then you'll be more recognizable, or already have a relationship where they can reach out and ask questions and feel like you're not just going to bludgeon them with the sales stick when they come to you. So in those cases, like in those cases, you just have to be available and have the trust and everything. But for the buying market phase, for those that are searching, Google search, email, honestly, like organic search for your branded terms, retargeting can be valuable here. Anything where they can reach out to you quickly, find your website quickly, and then quickly get what they need. Sometimes being on review sites, Capterra, G2, that sort of thing can be helpful as well at the buying market phase, because they're going to be comparing options kind of at that final stage. And then, of course, if it's buying committee, then you have a little longer than most, but you'll want to build in that upper funnel stuff, the suffering and contented market phases. Nurture phase, anything you can do to contact your customers, email, phone, text. Retargeting can actually be effective here for those that don't know all of the services you provide. If you provide a lot of different services or help in a lot of different ways around the same problem or similar problems, or problems that emerge after solving the first one, then retargeting can be helpful there to introduce them to the other problems you solve, but also shoot them an email, after you've been working together for a while, and like, hey, I think it'd be really beneficial to do a capabilities briefing and show you some of the other things we do, because a lot of our customers have found that it's beneficial to have this other service as well after we've solved this one. And before we started doing this, they didn't know we did it and ended up having a poor experience with someone else solving the problem for them, when we could have done it, without bringing in new vendors. This one gets a lot of eye rolls sometimes, but sometimes direct mail for existing customers in the nurture phase. I have been a victim of conversion by direct mail a few times. You get a really good like promotion code or something. Like I went to a conference on a direct mail piece. I've bought like nutritional supplements and stuff on direct mail. I got a pest control from direct mail, and it was the right time. And in the case of the first two, they offered a great discount via that direct mail, and I heard their numbers later, and it was like 500% return on a direct mail campaign. Not going to happen cold, just to be real, but if you send it to existing customers, David, especially B2C, more than I wouldn't necessarily recommend it B2B, but it's something to think about. And you'll think about your customers, understand them, and if you've got an upsell opportunity, maybe Ashar, there's a new level of certification or something. Cheap direct mail campaign.
I'm one of those people that roll my eyes at direct mail. This is good. I mean,
or email them,
no, but still, that doesn't mean that I shouldn't do it. It's just, it's just something you have to find the right offer, I guess.
Yeah, and that's the key, really. It is all about the right offer and the right audience, with the right messaging. So do everything right, and it'll work great. And then also, Megan, I don't know if you're like strictly donation based, but I've worked with a lot of nonprofits on like donor campaigns, and a lot of them with older donor bases tend to rely on direct mail, and are trying to digitize. But that's one of those situations where if you can segment your customer base or donor base by like, these are the old people that donate a lot of money, and these are the you just kind of do what you can to meet people where they are in those situations. There's not a lot of gold I can offer, unfortunately. So, oh my goodness, come on, chat. There we are. Yeah, definitely. Direct mail is not dead in the nonprofit world. Alive and kicking for the next 10 to 20 years, maybe. So suffering and waiting market, this is all of the education and awareness building, relationship building. A lot of focus on community building nowadays in B2B. It is really kind of the next wave. I think the next big trend is going to be really like doing things like what we're doing here, and offering communities like Dave Gerhardt's and things like that, where people can interact and learn from each other, and have their questions answered, and send referrals back and forth and that sort of thing. But the kind of the traditional channels like SEO, blogging, articles, white papers, Google display to drive traffic to those. A lot of people are saying display is dead. I think display is dead if you're expecting leads from it ever. But if you're just trying to like send a message to drive someone to an article or a case study, and it's relevant, you get your targeting right, I think you could be effective for that. You'll probably get a lot of clicks, like click fraud and whatever, but they're cheap clicks. So something to think about. I'm not likely to be anti-display anytime soon. YouTube is a big one. If there's a lot of education that needs to happen, honestly, I think YouTube can be great at every phase of the buyer's journey if you do it right. And I'm really leaning organic YouTube. Pay YouTube ads can be great for B2C. In most B2B cases, YouTube ads are not going to convert. And if they don't convert, leadership's going to be like, this isn't working, stop it. So, the purpose of YouTube is to YouTube videos for B2B especially is to educate, to establish credibility, and to raise awareness. So it's brand building. And it is one of those things that can have increasing returns over time, because if you put out a video now, then you could be getting views 5 years later. I was watching an interview that happened 5 years ago, right before this call, and I was like, this is so good. Like, it's still getting comments and likes, and it's one of those things that can continue to grow. So and yes, yeah, Megan is the second largest search engine in the world. So, you've got Google, and then you have YouTube, and then, many, many, many places removed. You have like Bing. So it's well worth being there to answer questions that are being asked. But people are also asking questions on places like LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Reddit, on Quora. So, know your audience, look for where they're asking questions, and be there to answer them. And to put your name, your brand name out there as a credible expert. And then once you get up to the contented market, it's really all about just visibility. So, display, this is where like lawyers use billboards and bus wraps and things like that. Again, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, podcasts can be great at the contented market, but also suffering and waiting markets, because you're establishing credibility, educating people. Any way that you can be in front of them and providing them with valuable information to help them understand their problem, you're going to be more likely to move them to the next stage. So I wanted to be able to talk a bit about like how to identify when someone is at different stages. We have all of 2 minutes left, and I have another call at the top of the hour, but suffice to say, this is where you have to know your audience, because it's going to be different for everybody. A lot of times, if they're asking questions, they're going to be probably suffering or waiting, unless it's like around cost. And even then, they may not be ready to buy. A lot of people view a question about cost as, or price as like, oh, the intent to buy. Well, maybe they're just seeing if they can afford it, and then they're comparing to other options. So like, they don't know if they're going to buy yet. If cost is an option, a problem, like maybe it's not in the budget. So, okay, well, we have to get creative. So know your customer, know the cycle they're going through, and then try and think, when you're looking at whatever qualitative data you have, like on-site search is a cool one if you have that option, or if you can do surveys, pre, post purchase, exit surveys can be informative. Just kind of try to think, when you're working through, what channels to use, what messaging to use, what stage of the journey am I speaking to with this? What goal do I have for this message? Because the goal is always like more leads, right? But, how can I move those who are not ready toward readiness? Like, how can I guide them there with the right answers, the right information, with this particular piece of marketing?